So first of all, Panache, I just wanted to say thank you for taking this time for this conversation I want to have today, and for making yourself available to be a light for people. This is a difficult time. So before we get into the questions, I just want to see how are you and your family doing?
We're doing really well. Thank you for asking. We've been self-isolating and self-quarantining now since March the 11th, since the World Health Organization issued this as a global pandemic. And I'm the only one that's going out. And of course, I'm taking all of the precautions necessary as it relates to the virus, but also have been placed immediately into service, supporting a global community in navigating what's happening internally around what's happening. And so it's been an amazing time of not just taking care of my family and advocating on behalf of the members of the world at large that have compromised immune systems or that are susceptible to the coronavirus, but also advocating on behalf of the well-being and the collective reset of all of us so that we can make the most of this transformative time to return to what's important, to return to what deeply matters, and to prioritize how we're spending our time during this time of self-isolation and self-quarantine.
Well, you've just confirmed that I knew that there was someone I wanted to reach out to have a conversation to share with my community here. And the things you just said right there, that's exactly why I knew that you were the right person. I have really been trained, and I've learned the value that in times of crisis and disruption to seek out teachers and mentors, people who can share their wisdom and their insight. And so I just sort of knew that you would have something to share about that, and you've already done so. I wanted to ask you if there was one thing you wanted people to most be aware of, or a practice, or something to, I don't know, even a caution. What's the thing that's on your heart to share with my community here in Houston right now with what's happening?
So what I want to share with you is everything that I've gleaned through my own exploration of everything that's happening, both from people that are trusted advisors and from a collective global community, and the feedback that I'm receiving on a daily basis. My first question, as somebody who's responsible for millions of people all over the world, was, what is the virus? At first, when it appeared in China, there was a lot of ambiguity as to what the actual virus was. And once that began to roll out and we began to be able to find more data and more information around what the virus was, I began to very quickly come to the same conclusions that we're coming to now, which is that it's a very aggressive form of coronavirus, which basically targets the respiratory system in the same way that SARS and MERS has done before, but the only difference is that this is highly contagious. And so I was waiting for the signal because I knew that at some point there would be a signal, and once we got that signal, we had to start paying attention. And that signal for me came on March the 11th, I believe, when the World Health Organization declared this a global pandemic. From that day forth, I have been advocating on behalf of the immunity of my family, primarily because I have a daughter who had a heart transplant when she was 18 months old. She's on immunosuppressants. And it's important that during this particular time, I not only advocate on behalf of her, but as someone who could be asymptomatic, also advocate on behalf of other people who don't have the immunity to make it through this thing. And so I set up some very simple protocols. Everything that is from outside of the house stays outside of the house. So I'm blessed in the fact that I have a garage here. Everything that comes into the house comes into the garage. It's sanitized, or it's left out there for enough time to where it's no longer contagious. I wipe everything down just as a precaution. And then once everything's been wiped down, I'll come into the house. I'll take off everything that I was wearing while I was outside. I'll put it in the washing machine, and then I'll immediately go to the shower. And that protocol may seem a bit intense or a bit much for most people. But again, remember that I'm advocating on behalf of a daughter who has a repressed immune system. So please feel free to modify as you feel guided to modify, right? So we're dealing with one potential issue, which is the virus, and which is the fact that this virus is very contagious and that we can be asymptomatic for days until we realize that we've gotten it. And in the time that we're asymptomatic, we can actually affect potentially up to 2 to 3 people in that window of time. So please, please, please use every portion of intuition and guidance and just good common sense and good hygiene to navigate your way through this time. All right. Also, as much as possible, designate one person in your house to be the person that goes out to buy groceries, to be the person who runs errands. That way, what you're doing is, again, mitigating your risk of exposure. Okay. Also, when you're going out shopping, make sure that you get to the store when it first opens, first thing in the morning. That way, there's a very low footprint in the store. You're able to get what you need, and you're able to leave before all of a sudden everybody else is there. And so you just have to adjust your habits, patterns, and behaviors around where am I going to be able to advocate on behalf of myself to where I'm minimizing my risk of exposure. Okay. And so that's the first thing on a very practical level, right? And this is something that I had to immediately communicate to everyone in my community. And as it stands with the virus right now, I'm at peace with it. I'm in a routine with it. It's just a given now that daddy goes out, daddy goes shopping and comes home, and daddy runs errands. And so just make it a practice and a habit and a routine to have that be the case for you in your homes, to advocate on behalf of not just your health and the immunity of your family or whoever you happen to be with, but also on behalf of those who have a compromised level of immunity now at this time. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing I had to do, second thing I had to do was immediately be able to support people with the energy of the virus. Okay, so when we look at the virus, what's it bringing up in all of us? It's bringing up everything on a survival level that's unresolved in us, right? We're facing this mortality from this virus if we're compromised, if we're susceptible, if we're at risk, but we're also facing this collapse in the economy. Okay, and many people are now being confronted with survival, right, from not just one area of life, but from more than one area of life. Okay, so as it relates to the economy, the first thing I did was get on the phone with everyone who's in mentoring and everyone who I'm supporting personally, and just let them know that the market would give back everything that had been made during the Trump presidency. That the wisdom that was coming from people who were in the economic world and the financial world, that were very high up, was that the market would give back everything down to 18,000. And then at some point we would find some point of equilibrium for a while until everyone decided what the next step was. And that could be a leg down or a leg up, okay? So the first thing that I have to let you know about that is that you haven't lost any money. You're actually where you were in 2016. And actually, by virtue of the fact that the market is where it is today, you're still ahead. And so immediately what I did was just say to people, listen, what we have to do is advocate on behalf of peace, okay? And you have to determine what your risk threshold is. Speak to your advisor, speak to your investment professional, and make sure that once it gets to that point that you're able to get out so that you can sleep at night. Why? Because we have to advocate on behalf of calm, okay? So that was the second thing that I set in motion. The third thing that I had to immediately deal with was members of my community that own businesses. As business owners now, we are being forced to make decisions that are very hard. Okay, some of us have had employees for 30 years, 40 years, right? And we're being asked to make decisions for the longevity of the company that are extremely hard, okay? And my advice to everyone who was running a company, whether it be a small business or more of a multinational entity, was to advocate on behalf of what was actually needed and to either cut the rest of it in half or to begin to phase out whatever wasn't required, okay? So it's the equivalent of putting a business on life support, okay? So that it can function, so the core functionality remains intact, and that everything else can either be just cut in half so people can maintain their jobs, but you just half the burden of the payroll for the meantime while you're going through it, so you don't have to lay people off. And then you're able to continue to sustain functionality and operation, right? So that was at the level of business, right? Take a look at what you need, and outside of that, anything above and beyond that you don't need, begin to scale it back, okay? And cut time back so that people can still be employed, they can still receive their salary and their wage, but at that point, you're able to keep the business operational from a solvency perspective, because what we don't have a liquidity issue, what we have is a solvency issue, okay? Right. So it's about remaining solvent, okay? Then, on a spiritual level, this is a time of mass awakening, okay? We are awakening. We are waking up to our families. We're waking up to the love that we have in our lives. We're waking up to the fragility of who we are as human beings. There is not one single thing that you will ever be able to take for granted ever again. I can't wait until I can hug another human being again. You know,
Right.
I just can't wait, you know, because in addition to being the only person that's going out, I'm also isolating in my home. So I'm not currently hugging my children. You know, I'm not able to kiss my kids. You know, I'm staying away from them on purpose, okay, because I want to make sure that they're okay, right? So I've already told them that it's going to be embarrassing once Daddy's able to hug them again, and I don't think I'm ever going to stop hugging them ever again, and they're just going to have to get used to it. And so, you know, what we're being shown is that there isn't anything that we can take for granted anymore. That literally everything is a blessing. Going to the grocery store and having the groceries that we need be available is a blessing. You know, our health and our vitality is a blessing. Our family is a blessing. And so this is a time of making the most of this divine reset to reconfigure everything in your life around what it is that you actually need. The simpler you become during this time, the easier it is it's going to be for you to pass through this window of time. Okay? And what is it that we actually need? Right? We need 2 to 3 meals a day, maybe. Most of us are spiritual and healthy, so we need 2 meals and a smoothie, right? We need a bed, you know, we need a roof over our head, you know, and most importantly, we need that love and connection because we're human beings and we're all in this together. And so this is a time of awakening. It's a time of remembering the oneness that we are. And that's one of the reasons why I instituted these global call to calm meditations every morning, because I want people to return to calm. The more we're able to come to a place of peace inside of ourselves, the more we're boosting our immunity. Okay, the neutral nervous system allows our immune system to be fully online and fully engaged, and we're able to again advocate on behalf of everyone who has a compromised immune system. And so these are just some of the protocols, just in a nutshell, that I've advocated on behalf of not just myself, but the community. And I'm asking people to trust their own guidance and their intuition as it relates to each of these, and to modify accordingly as it relates to you, where you are in your life. And always understand that we're advocating on behalf of peace. Okay. Right. If it isn't peaceful, it's something that you need to look at. Okay. And there are so many other things, because now finally people are together, you know, in the same house, you know, they're working together, they're living together, you know, couples are spending more time together than they ever have done. So this is a great time to look in the mirror of your partner and to embrace every energy and every aspect of yourself that you've been unwilling to embrace up until this point. Okay. This is an opportunity where we can move into greater intimacy and connection. You know, we're being asked to overcome everything that we're holding on to inside of ourselves. You know, now's the time to unburden your heart. Any resentment that you're holding on towards anybody just isn't worth holding on to. But the biggest thing of all is that if we make this window of time about somebody outside of us, and we make it about somebody else and what somebody is or isn't doing, then we're missing the point. This is a time of personal accountability and responsibility. We have to advocate on a very practical level on behalf of the health and well-being of our families. We have to advocate on a very practical level on behalf of the financial health and well-being of our families. We have to advocate on a very practical level on the health and well-being of our businesses and our creative expressions, because for most of us, they're the same thing. And we have to advocate on behalf of love in every area of our lives. And if we make it about ourselves, and we stop focusing on what somebody is or isn't doing outside of us, and we stop focusing on what the origin of this virus is, and we receive it for the blessing that it is, which is an opportunity to come home to ourselves and to return to nature, then we will come out of this thing knowing that we are divine, knowing that we are love, knowing that we really do have everything that we need, knowing that everything that Michael shares with you every Sunday is not just a wonderful idea, but it's the truth. My sweet brothers and sisters, this is the reset that we've been waiting for. Please make the most of it. Advocate on behalf of yourself, your families, and the collective well-being of us all. And we will come out of this stronger, because we know who we are. We understand who we are. And now it's time to express it for all of the world to see.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you. We are sharing your daily meditations with our community. We have lots of people from our community who are with you every day in what you're doing there. We have a new date for you to come to our community. We're going to have to watch that as it unfolds in the pandemic. But I just want you to know how much you are continuing to bless and nurture our community here in Houston. And we so look forward to the day that we can hug you and be with you. Thank you so much, Panache Desai.
I love you, Michael. My love to everyone there. I look forward to being with you in person soon. Know that you're not alone. Know that you have what it takes to get through this time in your life, that you've been prepared in every way, and that the more you can accept and embrace who you are at the level of your humanity, the more the truth of your divinity will be revealed. I love you, family, and thank you for loving me.